Hi guys, in this video we will be discussing the rise of the Roman Empire. Our essential question for this lesson is, how did different types of political organizations emerge? And now we're going to be looking at the empire aspect of the Roman Empire. Our takes and objectives are the following. We are going to identify major causes and major effects of the spread of Christianity, and we are also going to describe the major political, religious, philosophical, and cultural influences of Rome. By the time that we are done, you will have analyzed some primary and secondary sources about Christianity in the Roman Empire in order to determine how it went from a persecuted sect to the official religion of the Roman Empire. First, let's start with Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar was a Roman general and a national hero. He had put an end to a civil war in Rome and then named himself dictator of Rome for life. He eventually was assassinated by members of the Senate who were wary of the amount of power that he had already usurped and the popularity that he had among the Roman people. After Julius Caesar's assassination, another civil war broke out, and Augustus Caesar ends up victorious. He is Caesar's nephew and the quote-unquote heir through the throne, and he becomes the next emperor of Rome. During his reign, Augustus Caesar was able to preserve a lot of the republican institutions that existed in the Roman Republic. He did, however, remove corrupt officials and put people in power who were loyal to him. One of the things that Augustus Caesar did when he was in power was name himself as one of the Roman gods, and he expected the Roman people to worship him as such. A lot of his successors, the people who took over after Augustus Caesar, began to expand Rome's frontiers and created one of the largest empires in the world. Between 27 BC and 395 AD, Rome experienced what is known as the Pax Romana, that is Latin for Roman peace. This is a long period of peace in Europe in which there were very little conflicts and a lot of successes for the Roman Empire. Rome was able to rule this very large empire effectively because of several things that they did. One, they respected local customs, so the people that they conquered were able to keep their local traditions and weren't expected to adhere to Roman values. Another thing that they did was provide a system of laws that was uniformly applied everywhere throughout the empire, bringing a lot of stability to the Roman Empire. Rome also promoted trade, which brought wealth to different parts of the empire. And Romans also offered citizenship to people who were loyal. So it behooved the people who were conquered to be loyal and not fight back against Roman conquerors, because eventually they could be granted citizenship and earn more rights under the Roman Empire. Romans are responsible for many things, including their engineering, their army, and some of their architecture. So the Romans were great engineers. They invented concrete and used it to build over 50,000 miles of road and aqueducts that delivered water to the city of Rome. The Roman army was the first to have professional soldiers that were obedient to generals, so these soldiers were paid for their efforts. And one of the most commonly associated pieces of architecture with Rome would include this piece of architecture you see here, the Colosseum. It was a major stadium where they held gladiator fights, gladiator games, and it was a form of entertainment in Rome. Let's talk about the role of women in Rome. The women in Rome had to follow traditional gender roles. They were responsible, of course, for household chores, for raising the children. Men were the ones who represented the family in the public life. There was more equality for women in Rome than in Greece. Lower class women in Rome were allowed to work outside the home. They could also own property and make wills. However, just like in Greece, they were not allowed to participate in government. The Jewish people were eventually conquered by the Romans, and a lot of the Jewish people began to rebel against Roman rule. The reason why the Jewish people had an issue with the Roman emperor was that they refused to recognize him as a god. Remember that under the 10 Commandments, Jews are not allowed to worship any other gods but their God, and therefore it was a conflict for them to recognize the emperor as a god. And so they began to rebel and started trouble in different parts of the Roman Empire. The army, however, was very much larger and was able to stop these rebellions pretty quickly. And at one point they even destroyed that famous temple in Jerusalem that was so important to the Jewish people. And because the Jews could not be trusted, they were eventually driven out of Israel, and this began what is known as Jewish diaspora, or the Jewish dispersion. A lot of Jews fled into the north of Europe or west into Europe, and they were trying to escape the persecution from the Roman Empire. A lot of other Jews settled in areas of the Middle East where there are still large concentrations of Jewish people. Here's a map that will show you the dispersion of the Jews, the diaspora. So again, most of the Jews lived in this area here, and because of persecution ended up moving into other parts of Eastern Europe, Western Europe, and the Middle East. Okay, so let's talk about Christianity now. So Jesus was a Jewish carpenter and teacher who began to preach forgiveness, mercy, and sympathy for people in Jerusalem and in areas of Israel. He was crucified for claiming that he was the Messiah or the Savior of the Jewish people. So one of the things you need to know about the Jewish doctrine is that Jewish people believe that a Messiah is going to save them from persecution. And today, the Jews are still waiting for that Messiah, but in these times, some Jews began to believe that the Messiah was Jesus. And so those people who believed that Jesus was the Savior, that Messiah they were waiting for, they were the ones who became Christians because they believed in Jesus Christ. Some of the people responsible for spreading the Christian beliefs were Jesus's followers, also known as apostles. After his death, they continued to spread his message, and they are also responsible for the spread of Christianity. So even after Jesus' death, Christianity continued to spread. One of the reasons that it was so appealing to many people, especially to the poor, is that it promised an afterlife for everyone. And also, it's important to note that the Romans continued to see this religion as a threat, and therefore persecuted a lot of the Christians, especially because they too refused to worship the emperor as a god. A lot of them were arrested or even murdered in gladiator events such as the one you see depicted here in the Colosseum. One of the most famous emperors of the time who was responsible for helping make Christianity popular within the Roman Empire was Emperor Constantine. It is said that Emperor Constantine had a vision before a battle in which he saw the cross, and because he was successful in that battle, he attributed his win to God being on his side, and he converted to Christianity. He didn't make everyone in Rome convert to Christianity as well, but he did proclaim freedom of religion for all Christians. So thanks to Emperor Constantine, Christians could now be able to worship without doing it in secrecy. They could do it openly. Eventually, another emperor made Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire, and that then became the most popular religion in Western Europe and then eventually in the New World. Alright, so if we look at this map, this is where we can see where Christianity existed in these orange areas around 325 AD, and then by 600 AD, in a period of less than 300 years, Christianity had spread to all of these areas here in that yellow color. Okay? And that brings us to journal entry number 10. First, you're going to complete the DBQ assignment that we are going to do in class. And once you have done that, answer all the questions on the DBQ. You will explain how Christianity changed from being a persecuted sect to a state religion within the Roman Empire. So in other words, I want you to think about how Christianity went from being a religion that was persecuted, that the Roman Empire wanted to eliminate, to becoming the official religion of the Roman Empire. What changed throughout the course of several hundred years to make that happen. Okay, so if you have any questions, bring them to class. And again, thank you for watching.